So after re-watching this episode, it's made me think that I would really like to see a mashup episode featuring Doctor Who and Father Ted. That would be a good fun episode. Hello there everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name is Kevin, I am a geek, and you are watching Kevin the Geek. And it is time for my new Who Doctor Who review. This is Season 3, Episode 3, Gridlock. Now, please, if you are new to the channel, please do like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on those notifications, as well as dropping comments down below letting me know what your thoughts are of this episode. But for today, we are, of course, talking Gridlock, and it's quite apt that I think that this episode kind of brings the good start that this season's had to a little bit of a faltering stop. Now, what I mean by that is I think that the first two episodes were so good in setting up the dynamic between the Doctor and Martha. But here, aside from a couple of lines, they don't spend any time together because, of course, Martha gets carjacked right at the very start of the episode, and so Martha basically spends the episode pretty much trying to find her way back to the Doctor, and the Doctor's finding a way of rescuing her. And Martha just ends up being a little bit of a damsel in distress, a slightly more capable one, but a damsel in distress nonetheless. So, yeah, I feel bad for Martha in this episode. She really doesn't get to do a whole lot. And I did kind of say that last episode as well, but here it feels a lot more pronounced. Now, the Doctor, don't get me wrong, in everything that David Tennant was asked to do with this, he delivered. And in particular, the two opposite sides to the Doctor that you see both at the start and the end of the episode. At the start, when Martha's asking him about his own planet, and, you know, he looks back and thinks quite fondly of his time and his home planet. And yet, there's a sort of sadness behind there. Of course, it is tinged with the fact that his home planet is not there. It was destroyed in the Time War, or not, as we later learn down the line. And then when you see him at the end of the episode, he kind of thinks back more fondly, you know, and it's, yes, he starts off that little speech by talking about the circumstances why it's not there, talking about the Time War and the destruction of the Daleks, which that felt like that was added in there quite late on, knowing that the Daleks were going to be in the next episode, that they kind of had to introduce Martha to the idea of it so that it wasn't a completely new retreading, just saying, here are the Daleks, here's my greatest foe, blah, blah, blah. It's kind of explained to her off screen that, you know, why they're so dangerous. But then as the speech goes on, he's able to talk back with real fondness, and, you know, he's able to open up a little bit more to Martha, and that shows the effect that she's having on him. And I really like that. But there just wasn't enough between the pair of them for my liking. Now, the story in and of itself, it's a hard one, because back when Russell T Davies wrote New Earth, the original plan for that was the Face of Bo was going to die in that, and apparently in one of the early drafts, the Face of Bo died, and everyone died. The nurses, all of those faux patients, literally everyone died, and it was decided to hold off the Face of Bo's death until the third part. So they already knew that they were going to start season 3 in a similar way and coming back here, and it felt a little bit cheap to know that far in advance that you're gonna come back here, because there's nothing, I would say, truly interesting about this setting. I think at least if you can say with, you obviously in season 1 you had the end of the world, so that was showing how the Earth, gets destroyed, and then you had the second one, which is a follow-up, the sequel, where you see what's happened to the human race and where they've then gone on to. And that in of itself is a nice little dynamic. But here, I wasn't a fan of reusing this setting of this planet. And yes, okay, they've done it in a different way. You're seeing the Undercity, and you're seeing, the motorway kind of thing. But it felt, for lack of a better word, it felt a little bit lazy writing. Rather than thinking of a new place to take them to, they could have done the same thing, but it would have been nicer to see something a little bit different, like a different planet, but as you know, I like to nitpick. Now, the villains, if you can even call them villains, the Macra, it wasn't great. They were a one-time villain from Classic Who, and they needed a villain to put into the smog, and this is what they came up with. It wasn't engaging. It could have been anything, and yeah, okay, it's a nice callback to, for any Classic Who fans, but yeah, they were just there. There was no substance to them, nothing at all. I didn't like them, personally. Now, your supporting cast, what can I say, really? I would say, other than Ardal O'Hanlon, who played the main cat guy, Brannigan, he was brilliant. Ardal O'Hanlon is a really good actor, and I don't think he gets as much credit as he deserves, because most people would associate him as the bungling, dim-witted priest from the sitcom Father Ted, or some people don't remember him as well as I do in this one, but he played, pretty much the same character, really, but as a superhero in a show called My Hero, a superhero sitcom in the sort of early 2000s, which is a show that I think is really, forgotten about and really worth checking out if you haven't seen it before. It is really, really good. But here he got to show his kind of more dramatic side, as well as having still that comedy aspect of it. And he was great. The rest of them, though, eh, Novice Hames, she was there. You could be forgiven for forgetting that she was the one from New Earth. The two that carjacked Martha, Milo, and the other one I couldn't remember her name, they were just bland. There was kind of nothing to them. And the two sisters, they're probably the other two you could really say, well, I say sisters, the married couple. But yeah, there wasn't a lot of substance of them. At least Ardal O'Hanlon brought the energy to this episode. And this is probably why I like this episode better than I'm probably going to rank it. I enjoy watching this episode. Yes, there are a lot of problems with it, but I enjoy it. And a lot of that has to come down to Ardal O'Hanlon. He is just a breath of fresh air for this episode. Just that ever sense of optimism. A lot of the other stuff, the stuff I normally talk about, the set, the music, the costumes, dialogue, they're all just mostly average in this one. I will say the set, I did quite like the idea of the set and the looks of it, particularly the cars, because you have to think that these are places that people are going to be living in for years. The Cassini sisters, they were there for 23 years in this tiny, tiny place that's probably not that much bigger than my sofa, when you put the two halves together. And so they did a really good job in making it feel that it was small enough and compact enough that it was claustrophobic, yet at the same time just big enough that realistically you could say, yes, we are going to be living in this thing for a really, really long time. Now, when it comes to the music, the one thing that always stuck out with me with this one is the use of the hymns. Because they use, the first time you have all these people singing is the hymn, The Old Rugged Cross. And then the one right at the end of the episode is Abide With Me. Now, The Old Rugged Cross, I didn't really kind of look at until very recently, actually, last year when my nan sadly passed away. It was one of the hymns that she had chosen that she wanted to be sung at her funeral. And even now, after kind of listening to it, I kind of get where they're going for it, but it felt weird to me because what Russell T Davies was trying to go for is this idea that all of these people on the motorway, they're in a very dark and dire situation, and yet they all have this unquivering belief that someone is going to ultimately save them from the endless nightmare that they find themselves in. And could you argue that it's a bit cheesy? Yeah, you could. And same with Abide By Me, which is still kind of considered a funeral song, but it's a little bit more uplifting and kind of rejoicing. But the Old Rugged Cross, I get where they're going with it. For me, it just didn't quite land for me in that way. Maybe it's because I'm an atheist. I don't believe that there's any God. Nothing wrong if you personally you do believe and have those beliefs. I fully encourage everyone to have whatever beliefs they find comfort in. But for me, I am not a believer. I don't believe that there is an overseeing all-powerful God who's there to test us and everything like that. The closest thing you could have for that is life. Life is there to test you. But we've got one life, and for me, in my opinion, when you're dead, you're dead. And so you need to live life being as happy as you can, doing the things that you enjoy, and doing what you can. But yeah, I don't believe there's some overall God. Sorry, a little bit of a tangent there. Finally, we have to mention the face of Bo, and again, it's one of those that I think Rusty Davies always knew that he was going to reintroduce the Master, and this would be a way of kind of teasing that up. It would have been interesting had they done it originally in season 2, and then it didn't happen until the season 3 finale. That would have been interesting, because they would have had to write it a little bit differently, because obviously Rose would have been the one hearing the message and not Martha in this instance. But it was fine. I'm going to be honest, it did feel a little bit lackluster, with all the build-up and the thing from last season, but the actual kind of final message saying, you are not alone, that it really digs home, I think. Particularly after, the whole stuff about the Doctor saying that he thinks he's the last one remaining. But it's a very obvious, wink wink moment to say, watch out for the finale, keep coming back. But yeah, like I said, it's got a lot of faults, this episode. I'm not going to get away from that. But the stuff that is in it, I enjoy. I really do enjoy it. But before we finish up this episode, we of course need to do the rankings. Now, if you are new to the channel, the way I rank it is by giving 10 categories a score out of 10 to give an overall score out of 100. So, let's check out my scores. And there you have it. So, Gridlock has scored a grand total of 55 marks out of 100, which means that it is a C- episode. What are your thoughts on Gridlock? Please drop it down in the comments below. please make sure you do subscribe to the channel. We do lots of content every Tuesday, Wednesday and Friday at the moment. Do lots of other ad hoc videos as well, so check them all out. Lots of playlists on the channel. But until next time, my name is Kevin, I am a geek, and you have been watching Kevin the Geek. Goodbye.